Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by a world-renowned euphonium player. What does that even mean? Lance LaDuke.
Yep.
Just yup. Yeah, here's world-renowned Lance LaDuke. Yes, I am world-renowned.
That's right.
There you go. Big fish, small puddle.
So long as I get to define what world-renowned is.
Yeah, well, there is that. There were a few there were a few times in our travels where I feared a global incident, but I was. There's like
might be due for another war story.
Yeah, there's a few locations on the globe that just the exact same locations popped into both Lance's and my minds at one time. So, so there is that. So the road is super easy. So yeah. Anywho, yeah, man.
I was at lunch yesterday with a person that I've only met once. So my boss at CMU, Dennis Caldwell, and this person who may be teaching a class. And I started regaling Boston Brass stories and about how we used to trash, Jeff in particular. And she was like, "Did you not like him? Did you guys hate each other? Like, why would you treat like?" Well, no. I mean, actually, we like him, but it was an opportunity, and we were together all the time. She was like, "That just seems so mean."
We really do sound like bullies when we explain it, but it's like, no, he was asking for it. I mean, I abused him because I loved him.
Yeah.
You go on the road with Jeff Connor and not make fun of him. Come on now.
I just told her, I said, "Hey, take 4 people. You could be your best friends. I don't care who it is. Take 4 other people, travel 170 days, 24/7 with them for 7 years, and tell me how that goes." And she's like, "Oh, okay. I'll give you that."
Exactly. Jeff got the most of it because that was the low-hanging fruit. You didn't really have to spend any time brainstorming or really wait for that one perfectly timed line per week. It's like, but yeah, I let everybody have it. So the people who have a sense of humor and the people who didn't, they both gave you different reactions, which were which were both worthwhile. So
I told her the Tokyo horse laxative subway. Museum.
That was a good one. I don't think that we shared that on the last Boston Brass. Did we?
Well, it's quite a tease. I don't know, but there's a tease.
If we didn't,
go back and find it, or that one will be coming up.
Actually, how about here's an opportunity for a listener. If somebody who's an overachiever who wants to get a shout out on the podcast, because we will thank you for this. If you could go back to the Boston Brass War Stories episode and just write down a list of the stories that we told, so that because we're going to do another one of those, but because we're not bright, we didn't write down what we said and what we didn't say. So as a result of that, like we would have to go back first. That's probably why we haven't done a second one, because we don't want to be telling the same stories again. Not that I've ever been known to do that. I wish my wife listened to the podcast. I might ever listen to just that minute because she'll really enjoy it. So if somebody can do that and can email us, pedalnotemedia@gmail.com, then we will, whoever does that first, we'll give you a nice shout out on the podcast for helping us out. So we just need a list of the stories that we told. So sorry in advance for having to listen to it again, or sorry for having to listen to the first time. So, all right. Well, we are going to share a conversation that we had with yet another horn player from the Pittsburgh Symphony, Mark Houghton, who is one of your colleagues at the Duquesne.
The Duquesne, yeah, that's what they refer to it as around here.
That's what it's like.
It's the Mary Papert School of Music at Duquesne University, proud sponsor. I don't know about proud, a sponsor of the Brass Junkies. I have no idea if they're proud or not. Regretful, apoplectic.
If the check clears, we don't care if you're proud. If you were under duress when you did this, emotional, physical.
You're not proud. That's it. No, it's a great place to work. Those folks have treated us very well, and thank you for sponsoring the show. Thanks to Jim Nova, who always sends us a text when I mention his name. So Jim Nova.
Jim Nova? Thank you, Jim Nova. Is that the world-renowned trombonist, Jim Nova?
The world-renowned.
The Jim Nova.
The Jim Nova.
There you go.
It's actually the Jim, the Nova. It's like he's taken it another, and he's overdubbed. He's written a theme song, and it's got the lyrics "The Jim, The Nova," and he's overdubbed all 712 parts.
And word is actually that he is contemplating shaving a gap in his front teeth, like Steve Reed did.
I heard that too. Yeah.
Just to really help with the high notes. So I mean, he's got a good high register, but I think he's like looking for. I think he's looking for like legendary status. By the way, if you have not heard episode 59 with Steve Reed, like run to your nearest. Well, you're already, I guess, attached to your nearest podcast player. The dude played with
podcast.
He played with Maynard. He played with Duke. He played with Prince, or excuse me, the Duke Ellington Band. There's a little bit of a difference there. But anyway, he talks about filing the front teeth to get high notes. You have to hear it, and he's hilarious. So, and he's not pretentious, which was frustrating because he's literally a high note specialist. But go check that out. So.
Don't forget the Corvette.
So thank you to Duquesne. Also, thank you to Parker Mouthpieces, who provide the hosting for TEM. Parker Mouthpieces proudly offers fine customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the model that fills me with pride, the Andrew Hitz Artist model tuba mouthpiece, and the Lance LaDuke model euphonium mouthpiece, which came about by Lance blackmailing Michael. So he just needed something for the 10-year file. So 10-year for what? I have no idea. Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then
Parker Mouthpieces, they are really nice. Use them in the morning. Use them once or twice. Oh, Parker mouthpieces are fine. Component mouthpieces you'll find. So buy one today. Don't go away. Just buy a Parker mouthpiece.
So, for the record, it's 10:41 in the morning, and I'm 99.9% positive that Lance is not hammered.
True.
I'm pretty much positive he's not hammered, and it's super early in the morning, so he's not even really punchy. So
caffeinated, Now I'm sweating.
We need to charge Parker like an extra $50 for this episode. He got like a free jingle, like a full jingle, like not even just like a little like.
By Menon wasn't one of those. It was like a full on, like radio spot. Yeah. So now we just need to get more than 5 listeners, and then he can really get some traction with these ads. Thank you to everyone who's gone to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies. Super quickly, we are at $65 an episode right now, and when we get to $75, there is going to be an online concert featuring the two of us knuckleheads. And that is going to be for patrons only. So we're getting super close to that. And $100 is we are going to record a trumpet duet. No, really. The $50 per episode threshold, when that was met, there are some trumpet photos that have been taken that are going to be released. Actually, wait a minute. They were shared with the patrons last night when you were hearing this. So I've already got an alarm on my phone set. So we will share one with the general public, but or maybe 2. But there was like a whole photo shoot that we look like absolutely ridiculous. So you mean like trumpet players?
Well, yes, both, yes. So that is what I mean. So
button my shirt. You had sunglasses on.
I was wearing sunglasses indoors. Which I thought was a nice touch. We got done with our recording session, and I realized my sunglasses were like a 6-minute walk in each direction, and we were like packing up to go and to drive to DC. I was like, I have to go get them. So I made the trek up a whole bunch of flights of stairs out to the car, and it definitely added to the ambiance. So become a patron. You can see all of those. You can hear our online concert when it happens. And then the trumpet duet that we're actually going to be performing on trumpets. That's going to be spectacular. So, all right. So that is it for now. And I think that's it, right? I think we just need to get to our conversation with Mark Houghton.
Leave us a review on iTunes.
Oh yeah, leave us a review. Share it with a friend. So, And also, if this is your first time listening, not all of our intros are 10 minutes long. So, and without further ado, although 3 minutes of that was Lance's Parker Mouthpieces song, so we could actually make it 7 minutes with just a couple of snips there. So, anyway,
don't say that around.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, now he's thinking of frozen bags of peas and everything else. So, without further ado, here is our conversation with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra's Mark Houghton. And today we are joined by the third horn of the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, Mark Houghton. Mark, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm great, guys. How are you?
We're doing great. Lance said that he couldn't be better. I believe that
couldn't be.
You could be better?
No, it couldn't be.
You couldn't be better. Yeah.
I couldn't be.
I think Mark is wondering how his career trajectory. It's like not long ago that he won the job with the Pittsburgh Symphony, and now he's figured out he's on our podcast. So it's
the best of times.
It's he's on the back nine, as they say. So, when did you join the Pittsburgh Symphony?
It was 2014. The audition was in June of that year, and I started that following fall. It all happened pretty quickly. I was playing principal horn in Fort Worth directly prior, and I moved my wife and 3 kids across the country in very little time. We sold a house. It was a little bit nuts, and I got to give my family credit for going along with this crazy adventure in a way, because I've taken a lot of auditions and certainly have lost more than I've won. So you never know what's going to happen. Of course, it was a job that I was incredibly interested in, but very glad to be here. And now we're very settled and really enjoying our time here.
How old are your kids?
They are 4, 7, and 9.
They know the cause of that now. You don't have to have that many.
People keep telling me about it, but yeah, I think we're done with kids. We've taken measures, but
you live in separate houses right next to each other.
Right.
She stayed in Fort Worth.
No, but my kids are great. Sometimes they drive me nuts. My son is upstairs playing like Sonic the Hedgehog right now. Just anyway, but they're Pittsburghers now, which is pretty great.
That's kind of wild, isn't it? It's a very distinct place and kind of hard to describe to people.
Yes.
Yeah. They'll be all right. They'll be tough. That's good.
That's right.
So, and you've been teaching at Duquesne. How long have you been teaching at Duquesne?
This is my second year, and I'm just currently coaching a brass quintet. And I hear juries. I'm there when I can be and help the students out. Actually, in the process of recruiting some horn students of my own, and hopefully we'll have students there that I teach, and Zach and I, are eager to get more horn players at Duquesne.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And how do you guys? I know there's 2 trumpet guys and 2 horn, and they happen to all be guys. That's why I'm saying guys. How do you decide who does what? Or you specifically go and recruit your folks, or if somebody, let's say there's a prospective horn student out there, how would they know which of you they would get lessons with?
Well, we kind of go after students just individually, and there's really, it's more or less I try and recruit students that would like to study with me, and in the case of, we've had some students apply for artist diploma and masters and things, and they've expressed interest in studying with both of us. So I'd assume we'd probably trade semesters and have a horn class that we both collaborate on, that sort of thing. So I think it's important, that the students get a well-rounded, education, in the sense of, they're getting exposure from different teachers. Zach's an amazing teacher. He's been here a lot longer than I have, so I can learn a lot from him, and I have. And I think we both offer something valuable to the students.
I think so too. Well, it seems like you guys get along really well. I mean, I could see I have seen in some instances where there's more than one teacher of an instrument, and there gets to be this sort of Cold War that happens. And these are my students, and don't go anywhere. Don't even look at them. Don't even think about them. And it seems like you two have already got a cool relationship, and I suspect that's going to make things a lot better for all of the horn students there. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think we both want what's best for the students, and we know that having more opportunities and more exposure to different ideas is probably best.
That's
and do
weird.
You feel like
keeping the students' best interests in mind? That's
you got this all wrong. We'll beat that up next time. So is third horn was that the chair you always wanted, or like we talked to Zach quite a bit about how much he likes playing all of the books and being kind of all over the horn? Do you consider yourself more of a high horn guy, or do you like what? Are you just where do you stand with that?
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Funny enough, I have I'm in the process still of learning to play third horn actually, because this is still new to me. I played first horn every job I've had professionally until now, and there's some sense of having done it on not at the level, of course, of the PSO, but having played principal horn in other orchestras, you're in the hot seat. It's you live it. You can't really walk away at any time. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of an amazing feeling, but it also, I after doing it for as long as I did, I did kind of feel the artistic burden. It kind of started to weigh on me a little bit. So there are a lot of times, when we're on tour in Vienna and we're playing Tchaik 5 and I look over and see Bill's chair over there, I think, man, I'm glad I'm not sitting there today. That sort of thing.
You're the second person from your section to say that today. So
I mean, it's just and there's aspects of playing first that I certainly miss, but at least I feel like I've done it. I can feel confident that I've done it and done it well, and I don't miss it every day. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. I do find that I have to do more individual work just to keep my chops at the level that I need them to be. Third horn books, they're not quite as demanding, obviously, not as exposed, but I find it interesting that every once in a while I'll have something that's incredibly difficult and exposed, and it seems to come out of the clear blue. So third horn is funny that way, is you really have to be on your game. And I talk about, it's like, flying at 30,000 feet, it's all relative. Everything feels comfortable. But when you dip down and you're flying at a lower altitude for an extended period of time, and then you have to come up to 30,000 feet for this one moment, that's been an adjustment for me for sure.
How do you prepare for that? Like what, you said you feel like you're still kind of learning how to do that. What does that entail?
It's mostly psychological. It's mostly mental for me. Learning not to freak out at those moments. Relying on the past experience of playing first horn, kind of reconnecting with that at times when I need to kind of summon that mentality. But generally, I'm a team player. I have to, support whatever everyone else is doing in the section. We have such a great horn section here in Pittsburgh, and Bill is playing with Bill. It's like I get a master class every time I sit down. It's just unbelievable. But it's so much fun. I don't know if I would have as much fun playing third horn in other places. I'm just not sure. But here it seems like a natural fit for me, and I feel very lucky to be able to do it.
Do you mind sticking with the psychology of this? I think it's we've done, I don't know, some shows, and we have spent some, believe it or not, we have talked some about how to play a brass instrument. There's a
couple of times,
joking.
Accidentally.
But we don't often get to talk about the psychological aspects of it. And do you mind if we stay there for a minute?
No, that's fine.
I'd been dead in the water if you said, yeah, I mind.
Well, then get your own podcast if you mind.
Right. So what, how are you approaching this problem? I don't know, problem's not the right way to say it. How are you approaching the situation? Like what are you using a specific methodology, or did you consult with somebody or read a book, or are you just sort of putting it together in your head?
Well, I've started doing a lot of meditation, actually. I think that really helps. I kind of avoided that for years. I didn't really understand. I was a little bit intimidated by the idea of it, but I find that, 10, 15 minutes a day, I ride the T into work, so I find that to be a really great time where I have sort of built in 20 minutes in my schedule where I have nothing going on. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of focus on my breathing, close my eyes for 15 minutes. It seems to help. I was surprised at how effective it's been.
How long did you say you've been doing it?
On and off, a little bit here and there. Probably past, about the past 12, 18 months or so. Oh. So it really seems to help me shut out any distractions, when I really need to bring everything into focus. Mm-hmm. So that's been a really important component of it, positive affirmation, seems cheesy, but
I'm a big believer.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I have to tell myself, hey, you can do this. You're a good horn player. I remember taking the audition for the job. I was in the finals. I was in a dressing room preparing to go on stage, and it sounds kind of corny, but I had to look myself in the mirror, look myself in the eye, and tell myself I deserve to be here and I can do this, and that had a really powerful effect. It may seem ridiculous at the time, but I would encourage anybody to try these techniques. They really made a difference for me.
Did you find with meditation, what inspired you to do it, or did you use like an app, or did you how did you first get the notion that this might be useful to do?
Well, a lot of people had mentioned it, that it helped with performance. A lot of friends and colleagues. I have used that Headspace app, which mm-hmm. is a pretty popular one.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that's really helpful to get started with. I also wondered initially, do I need to visualize things while I do that? And for me, that's part of my audition process too, is visualization. But I think everybody's different. Generally, I found that just shutting down distractions and being able to kind of quiet my mind was the most helpful thing. So less of a actual visualization and more of just quieting my thoughts, I guess.
You're the second horn player actually that we've interviewed that's kind of gone deep on meditation. The other was Phil Munns, principal mm-hmm. in the Baltimore Symphony back in episode 16. He
Sure.
talked at length actually about meditating and the benefits that it's given him. And by the time he was in the Baltimore Symphony, he had how many years was he in the band, Lance? A long time. right? I mean, he's been around. He's unlike you. He's old, so he's. I liked how you said that about Zach before. He was like very like he's been here a lot longer than I have been. He's got a lot of experience. That was like the most polite way of calling your colleague old than that I've ever heard. So you're still you what now?
Very PC.
Yeah, exactly. It was very polite. It was well put. So I love meditation, man. It's do I do it all the time? No, because I'm an idiot, because every time I do it, it benefits me. So why would I do it all the time? But yeah, boy, there's just the centering of everything. And, and I've been a sub in major orchestras, but the stress of, of moving from one job to the other. And then how long is the tenure process in Pittsburgh?
It's a couple seasons generally. I mean, it runs the length of a couple seasons.
Yeah. So until that's taken care of, then that's like a whole new, there's a lot to deal with there. So there's a lot of distractions around every corner. So if you let it, so that's pretty cool that you were able to find that thing to center.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's funny that, I think in our culture too, it's strange to think about sitting for any period of time and doing nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, that seems like such a lazy thing to do, or why would you be so unproductive?
Waste of time.
Right. But I mean, it's actually clearing your head is I found it to be really important, and it's harder than it, it's obviously, as I mean, if anybody's ever tried it, they know it's challenging,
Yes.
It's hard to think about nothing.
Yes.
I mean, it's deceptively difficult. So
yeah, for sure.
A healthy brain is an active brain. So, it's, it's hard when a thought pops into your mind to not follow it. And then, as when you're a beginner at meditation, which I don't hold myself up to be any kind of expert at all, but it's funny how you then recognize that you're following a thought, and then your thought is about following the thought. It's very, it gets very layered. So, and layered thoughts that are also intertwined with self-judgment is not exactly clearing your mind. So,
right.
But I felt very lucky that the person who kind of introduced me to meditation, they pointed out the whole healthy brain is an active brain, and so that it's not. And he didn't mean it was unnatural. I mean, this guy was suggesting I do it because he did it all the time, but that it's, it's not a natural thing for the brain to shut off. So to not expect that within a week that you're going to be good at it, or 5 minutes you're going to be good at it, to just have the patience to see through the process and to appreciate the process for what it is, which is a process. And I was thankful that I got that advice because, 30 seconds felt like I was sitting there for half an hour. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know the feeling. It's
the opposite of Snapchat and Instagram stories and, nonstop Facebook messages and, and Twitter and everything else. So
exactly. Yeah.
Do you teach it to your students? Do you spend some time talking about this side of it with your pupils?
A little bit. A lot about the more about generally just positive affirmations. Not allowing the negative thoughts to kind of take over, in preparation for any type of audition or performance, So, I mean, I think that's an easy way to start with the mental game is, just don't cripple yourself with negativity. It's so easy to do. We're in such a self-deprecating, field, really. I mean, it can always be better. I mean, I'm sure you guys probably feel this way sometimes, where it's like, you think you really nailed something, and then you listen to the archive or the playback, and it's never quite as good as you thought, or there's always something that can be a little better, and that's healthy in a way, but I mean, in my personal experience, that can tear me up sometimes, So I have to just remind myself it's a journey, it's a process, and counteract that with some just positive energy,
Well, and our corner of the music business being, classical music, it's like we're our entire education, our entire existence, at least it's this pursuit of perfection, whatever the hell that even means, and which is not attainable. I don't care who the hell you are. And so it's, it's so vitally important. I mean, every person listening to this, including all three of us, at times we have been way too hard on ourselves in terms of our playing or whatever. And being able to have any tools at all to be able to, you got to have the self-awareness to recognize that, which when I was younger I didn't have. I was just really hard on myself because that's how you succeed, and that actually got me a ways, but it's just not sustainable, from a light, health-wise, spiritual-wise, otherwise, but to be able to have tools to not beat yourself up is, being a human is hard.
Yes.
And then being a human who's playing a horn, in front of, in the back of like a world-class orchestra, and you got to play this part at this specific time, whether your lips feel good or bad, whether you're hungry or stuffed or, all the above. It's, it's kind of filled with pitfalls unless you're approaching things the right way, which it certainly sounds like you are. So where did you go to school?
I went to the Eastman School of Music from 1998 to 2002. So
I feel so old.
Yeah.
I'm not as old as Zach, but
it's funny, funny story about Zach and Joe, the fourth horn in PSO. They're both Eastman grads as well. Studied with a different teacher, with Reynolds, who was there, and what was actually quite involved when I was there too. He's since passed away, but I studied with Peter Curau at Eastman, who was a great teacher and still there and cranking out really great students. But there's kind of an Eastman connection with half the horn studio now, half the horn section in PSO, which is pretty cool. And those guys also they went out to LA and studied at USC for grad work, and they studied with James Decker, who is one of the big studio horn players out there for many, many years. He too has passed away pretty recently. But my parents, I was born in Long Beach, so I was born in California, grew up in Texas, but my parents studied with Decker also. Wow. So there's this crazy, in this industry, of course, I find it interesting to see the connective tissue between teachers and students and traditions of playing and all that. And it's kind of neat because I studied a little bit I took lessons with Decker and auditioned for USC as well. And my mom particularly, my parents are both horn players. I guess I should have mentioned that, which is kind of weird. But, and they tried to steer me away from horn, but I disappointed them and, went straight for it. Anyway, it's just interesting how small a world it is in terms of, in my experience, now I'm working with two guys who went to Eastman and studied with the teacher that my parents studied with. So it's pretty great.
So I need some advice. I don't want my son to grow up and play trumpet. So what do I have to do, or what do I have to not do to make him play trumpet? So do I have to encourage him to play trumpet and then he'll play something else, or how does that work?
Maybe so. Yeah. I think it's the reverse psychology aspect.
Oh, yeah, cram it down his throat. There you go. Good idea. Get back in there.
If that backfires, I'm coming for you, Mark. I'm just saying.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm just saying. So.
And you're not being a big enough jerk.
Yeah. So your parents aren't just players, but your family owns you make horns, correct?
Well, we don't actually make horns at this present time. My dad is the brass technician, craftsman.
Okay.
And he has made horns. He can pretty much do anything. As far as customization or building, we've just focused on he's focused more on the service aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved to Fort Worth, I got a job as principal horn in Fort Worth Symphony in 2005. I moved there, and I basically had an opportunity to get involved in that business in a not necessarily in the service and the repair end, because I had trained that way. That was my first job, was working in my dad's shop, and I learned basic skills and wasn't the greatest repairman, wasn't terribly interested in it, to be honest, but have great respect for people who do it well. I basically was more interested in the aspect of dealing new instruments, and had an opportunity to acquire some dealerships, mainly overseas at first. Engelbert Schmid horns, which are really, beautifully made instruments, and the high level, very premium horns. My father had some contact with Engelbert over the years, and my parents had studied at a Hochschule in Germany as well. So my dad is a German speaker, and so I had some connections to manufacturers over there. And around that time, 2005, 2006, we had an opportunity to start carrying some of these brands, and I actually created a sort of an adjacent business to distribute those brands and become a dealer, in the U.S. for some of those that are hard to get and hard to find brands of horns.
Huh.
So that's kind of how it started. And now it's really grown tremendously. And I'm still involved. In fact, just this morning I was doing a bunch of work for the business, and I can do a lot remotely, thanks to technology these days. But I do make trips there as well, and it's really exciting. It's a big part of my life, and obviously, I feel like I have a lot of irons in the fire between that and teaching, and of course my main job at the symphony. So
at least you only have 3 kids.
Right.
How's the market changed over the years you've been doing this? What do you say, about 15 years? Did you say something like that? Well, I mean, you grew up around it, I guess. But what are you noticing in terms of trends or where things are headed?
Yeah, well, there's so much. I mean, I don't even know where. It's hard to distill that down to a short answer. But all different price points. You can really find. With horns, and it's different with some other instruments, but with horns, there's just so many good horns out there. There's so many different makes and so many different possibilities with the design of the instrument. Mm-hmm. I think we're fortunate, and in a way, it's kind of a curse, because it makes it difficult to choose. If it was oboes, it's Lauret, and that's pretty much it. Other instruments have sort of their go-to brand or two, and that's a done deal. But horns are, it's ever evolving. There are more horn makers every day, and there's quite a few popping up that are, they have really impressive models, they're coming out with.
So when you're talking to a customer, you're doing matchmaking, basically, right? You're sort of trying to figure out where they are and what sort of thing might be a good fit for them.
Right. Sometimes we have amateur players that really love the instrument, but they're not necessarily going to be working with it. They're going to be playing more casually, and then obviously that opens up, more possibilities. But if somebody is really, focused on working, an advanced student, college student, or young professional player, or an even experienced professional player that's looking for a change, try and steer them towards, instruments that are going to be really marketable, that are going to retain their resale value. And that has changed a lot, So definitely the pendulum has swung, towards brass horns, smaller brass instruments, rather than this typical American 8D, Con 8D, nickel silver, large, sort of Hollywood horn sound. That's definitely it's still around, but in most orchestras it's just not the trend these days. I love that school. I actually really have a connection to it, and I played an 8D for most of my career. And funny enough, I'm not really an equipment guy. I like to stick with what works. But it has changed quite a bit. So I try to steer people towards, first and foremost, are they comfortable? Do they feel like the horn is they're getting out of the horn what they put into it, sound wise. And then, beyond that, it's is it a good long-term value? Is it gonna allow them to take the next step, whatever that may be? So
it's funny. I'm not really an equipment guy either, and so the thing that always confuses me is how somebody who is an equipment person. How would you ever know whether you've done it right or not? I try and figure out what's the operator doing wrong. Instead of what hunk of metal would help me do this differently. As somebody who isn't really a tinkerer, not to put words in your mouth, but that sort of sounds like that.
Right.
What do you do with somebody you can tell is just like a gearhead? It's just like want to talk.
Well, I mean, fortunately, you can present them with a lot of really great equipment these days. I mean, I think that's the biggest change is the quality and the level of options. I think I'm like you, Lance, where I'm more neurotic. I assume it's always me,
Me too.
which is a pretty healthy, honestly, I think that's a healthier approach. Because otherwise it's like you're lost in the desert searching for the next thing all the time. I think that's more troubling to me, the thought of that. But it is true that equipment can solve some problems, and you kind of take the horse to water. You show people all that you can, and I've had to have those conversations with people just to be honest and say, look, I mean, if you're switching horns every 6 months, it's I don't think it's doing you any favors, really. So yeah, it's something to be said for committing to something.
How long would you suggest somebody stick on a thing before they jump off?
Oh boy, that's a tough question.
I hit the hard-hitting question.
I don't really know. I think it depends, and obviously, it's.
When something's wrong, kind of right away. I guess you can jump off of that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to feel comfortable. You got to feel like you can do what you're called upon to do on the instrument, color-wise, et cetera. And then sometimes you're at the mercy of a particular tradition or a section that plays a certain way, in terms of professional orchestras or bands. And it's there's certain sections you got to play this piece of equipment. And that's just a reality. So sometimes that makes the decision for you. That's not really the case where I am. We all actually play different horns in the PSO, but we, funny enough, there's 6 of us, and we by twos we're each playing. It's two Paxmans and sometimes a Patterson, 2 Paxmans, a Rout, 2 Rauks, and 2 Hill horns. So they're all different makes, but there's some crossover there, and then there's also the fact that we're all on unlacquered yellow brass horns. So there's a similarity there. And I think I always thought just speaking about the PSO, I always thought about the PSO sound as being a big brass horn sound. So a very rich, very, almost in some ways a sort of a hybrid between the big Hollywood sound and the more the Chicago style.
Mm-hmm. So how how as a section, how do you guys work that out? Like, not that specifically, but just how does the section operate? Is everybody just instinctively knows to match what Bill's doing, or do you guys have sectional and you talk about, like, kind of, can you pull back the curtain and sort of talk about Tuesday at your first rehearsal of the day, what's kind of happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's Bill leads primarily by example, and frankly, none of us can really quite match what he's doing. Match is not really the right word. I think we all try and complement what he's doing. And of course, we're listening and doing our best. He's a man of few words when it comes to making comments or critical suggestions. I mean, it happens. When it does happen, it's rare enough that I know it, if it's aimed at me, like, it must be a really big deal if he's talking about it. So,
my son really jumps to attention when I get mad, because it doesn't happen very often. He gets a look on his face like, oh, it's that day. All right. Fine. Right.
I mean, I think I think also in the hiring process, we've looked to build and I'm the new guy, so sounds strange to say we in a certain sense, but the section has been built around hiring people with a similar concept who listen to one another, and hopefully, that's the way it should work. Mm-hmm. But it's when I first got here, I had to remind myself that I'm not going to keep up with Bill. It's just he's a very special player, and he's doing things that are really on the edge of what's even possible most of the time. And so I think I'll speak for myself and just say that I've gotten into trouble by trying to do some of those things, the extremes, and I have to just remind myself that I'm here to complement what's happening, and do my very best to keep up, as it were.
That's got to be a nice place to work.
It is, the standard is always there. I mean, he's not just setting the bar, it's like he is the bar, for all of us, really. And I think that transcends beyond our section as well, but it's really great to go to work and have that level of excellence, consistently there.
There's no question that he's one of the standout players in that band. I mean, that's pretty well agreed upon in town, that there's lots of good reasons to go hear the PSO, and he's near the top of the list.
Sure.
You guys, and now this could be all smoke and mirrors, but it seems like as a section, you guys get along as well, too. So let's assume that that's true. And then let's also assume that has not always been the case in the groups that you've played with. So what do you do in a section if there's a personality conflict?
Well, sorry, that was my computer making some sort of noise. We get along extremely well. I'm so lucky. I landed in what I consider to be the most collegial and the best horn section that I know of, So count my lucky stars on that, really. I felt like, other places I've been, that I've had really good relationships with my sections in other places as well. It can be a challenge, and I've heard stories about other places where it is a challenge. I don't know that it's any one person, the section leader takes, I'm sure, shoulders, a certain amount of responsibility for the dynamic of the section as a whole. But it's also just, it's luck. I mean, and people willing to put things behind, sort of put differences aside. It's not that we don't have disagreements, but it's that, you see the bigger picture at the end of the day, hopefully. Bill is super laid back, and I think most of us are just, we want to show up and enjoy what we do. We also, the interesting thing is we all really want to be at work. There's nobody that says, when we do rotation and Bill decides rotation and he consults with us and sends us out, a roster and says, hey, does this work for everybody? And there's no guarantee that, we all always get what we want. But we're all just, we're all going to show up and enjoy what we do. And oftentimes it's most of the time I'd rather be playing than, even if, we have 6 horns and sometimes we only need 2 for a given program or a piece. But it's funny. Sometimes it's more about like, hey, I want to play. No, I want to play. It's everybody wants to be there, which I think is rare. I mean,
it's not that way everywhere. That's for sure.
There's situations where everybody, people are clamoring for time off all the time. It's just not that way here. I think another thing is that it makes it easier to stay in shape when you're playing. Otherwise, to me, I have to go home and get out the etude books all the time and do the long tones and stuff, which is good too. But I'd rather come to work and get the reps in that way. There's a lot of levity. There's a lot of, a certain amount of, healthy, screwing around is okay, I think. And we do plenty of that. I think that keeps the mood really light. If you can't have fun and laugh at stuff, what's the point really?
Sure.
So that's a big part of it as well. And we all like to get together and joke around and not take things too seriously. So that definitely helps as well.
So you got to solo with the orchestra once, right?
Yeah. My first season, actually, Schumann concerts took for 4 horns.
Oh, wow.
Which was a total thrill. And a little bit of a nail biter being my first,
right.
My first season. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I don't screw it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I was wondering when you just said that it was your first season and then that was the piece and you said thrilling. I was like, is he talking thrilling good or is he talking thrilling like terrifying? So maybe both. Yeah.
A bit of both. Yeah. I mean, but anytime as a horn player, anytime you get to play that piece, it's a great opportunity. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What do you do in the off weeks? I mean, when you're not, did you end up focusing on the horn business or you got 3 kids? I got that part, but I mean, play with other groups? Are you doing like what else are you involved in?
Yeah, all of the above, really. It's I'm always trying to juggle and kind of manage my time. That's a real challenge. But ideally I put, not that every day goes like this, but my goals are to put the horn first. So if I can get up in the morning and the first thing, if I can get 45 or 90 minutes in on the horn early in the day, that usually allows me to pivot to other things, and not feel like a total failure the rest of the day. It really does, my whole, and I'm sure you guys understand this and a lot of listeners will too. It's like a security blanket. If I haven't practiced, haven't warmed up by 4 p.m. or something, it's just harder and harder to get the motivation and to get the quality, get that quality time in. So that's really important. So I try to, no matter what we're doing, I try to have a routine that's predictable and consistent, and do a lot of other things on top of that. I'm looking for more. I've had a few of these little opportunities to go and do regional horn workshops, and other sort of solo masterclass opportunities. I think those are really helpful because it keeps me on my game and also good for recruiting. So that's another facet. The business stuff is ongoing. It never really ends. But it is exciting, and when I make time for it, which I have to, but it's always a challenge to work in enough time and balance that. But it's fun, you know. I enjoy the all of the aspects of that as well.
Have you noticed a crossover? I mean, we talked about meditating a while back. How is it pouring over into the other areas of your life? Is it? Well, we'll just stop there.
Well, you know, with my kids, you know, it's I find that I have a little more patience, you know, which is a big deal. You know, because they can drive you nuts. I mean, you love them to death, but they drive you nuts.
True and true.
Yeah. So I've definitely noticed positive there.
It's funny. It's a small dose, right? I mean, it doesn't take that long, but it has huge application everywhere.
Right. You know, and yeah. So I guess, I mean, and just not, you know, I guess not feeling overwhelmed, which I can tend to struggle with. I feel like I'm pulled in many different directions. So, and it's my choice, you know, but important to stay focused on one thing at a time and be able to just manage one task at a time. So I think it's been helpful that way.
Here's an interviewee type question, but if you could go back to when you were a student, what advice would you give yourself?
Long tones.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm half kidding, but I did not do long tones until I was about 30 years old, and boy, what a huge difference that makes. You know, stuff like that.
So give us a prescription for a long tone exercise.
Oh wow. And there's so many variations. You know, I like to do breath attacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
and
super helpful.
Pulses sometimes. So like a pulse or a balloon swell kind of approach helps me. And then, you know, just the standard crescendo, diminuendo ones over about 16 counts or even less, 10 to 12 maybe. Just depends on what I have time for. I went through a period of 2 years where I did long tones every day that I did not have a show. That was the goal. That was the regimen for 2 solid years. And at the end of that time, I had to just take some time off long tones, but it made a huge difference in my playing. And I think I need to get back into that level of commitment to long tones. But another thing that I would tell myself, I was in such a hurry to get out of school and get a job. I was so focused on that. And, you know, my parents were professional horn players, and they would tell me, you know, they would say, you know, we'll support you if you want to do this, but it's really difficult to get a job, and you're going to have to start preparing as early as you can. You're going to have to start auditioning as early as you can. So I think I actually took my first audition at age 18. I didn't get the job, but I had the experience of taking the audition. It was second horn for San Antonio Symphony. I think I missed my high school graduation ceremony to do that. As funny as it. But I was really focused on it, and then I went into school with that same level of focus on auditions, and I took auditions, and I was making finals at auditions when I was 19, 20 years old, which was a huge, you know, for me, that was like I was on cloud 9. That was like it just told me I was on the right track. Looking back, you know, hindsight is I wish I had been a little more thorough in terms of developing other aspects of my playing, more of like the calisthenics approach, let's say, like, you know, exercises, patterns, etudes, things, scalar studies, that sort of thing, and other, you know, sort of more long-winded disciplines. I guess I kind of, you know, I was on the audition fast track, and now I'm having to come back and revisit some of that other stuff. And I was in such a hurry to get out. I think I would have benefited from a, you know, sort of a, you know, looking more at the horizon,
the foundational,
broader picture. Yeah. So
I have this weird working theory notion idea that there is something about long tones that is akin to meditation.
Yes.
And I never really, I don't know, it's just a few months ago I was playing long tones, and it just sort of jumped into my head because I had meditated and then I started playing long tones, and I there's a similar thing that happens in a similar single-minded focus. And of course, for us, it's related to the breath. And so I don't know what to do with that. I actually thought it might be interesting to develop a meditation practice that was built around long tones. But it's just a random thought to throw.
Yeah, I think it's a really excellent point. I mean, I definitely see the connection. And I guess in a way, I mean, I was really focusing on long tones before the meditation thing, but in a way, it was at least partially checking that box for me. I think at the time when I started.
It's certainly centering.
Yeah. If you're doing it right, you're locking all those other thoughts out. You just sort of let them all go, and you're paying attention to the wind or the sound or the sensation of it. Pretty interesting. Look at man. See, we can be deep, Andrew.
Sometimes, accidentally. The audience is getting freaked out. Yeah, you asking like 2 insightful questions in a row.
No, it doesn't.
One of my former mentors used to bark "slow down" at me, just like in general, just in terms of life wise, And I'd be like, yeah, but, and he'd be like, "Slow down, Andrew," like, just to which long tones meditation, it's all quite healthy. So speaking of centering and of getting healthy. I'm sure you've heard about our dear friend Jens Lindemann and the chop problems that he is currently suffering through. I'm wondering if you're obviously you're a very seems like you're a very introspective person and very conscientious and so maybe sometimes except for when you're not and maybe you could offer Jens some of your wisdom in this time of need.
Okay. I'm going to say just 2 words. More tequila.
Well, that's good. That if you don't have time to meditate, there's always tequila. So
that's right. There you go.
That's a totally sustainable business model too. So yeah, there I'm sure a guy with 3 kids drinks tequila all the time. Yeah, it's just like, morning, noon, and night. So
Daddy needs his medicine.
Oh, goodness.
What can we plug for you, Mark?
Sorry?
What can we plug for you?
Wow. Houghton Horns, of course, houghtonhorns.com is the website. We have some really cool events coming up in April. They're in Texas. And then later on in the summer, we're working on some recital events of some artists coming through. At the end of April, we're presenting Javier Bonet, who's a Spanish horn soloist. He's very popular in Europe. He's not as well known in the U.S. He's a virtuoso, amazing player. He's doing a masterclass and a recital in Texas. So that all those events are on our Facebook page, Houghton Horns, on Facebook. And we're also looking to present David Cooper, who's the new principal horn of the Berlin Philharmonic, who I used to work with in Fort Worth Symphony years ago. Our paths crossed. We hired him in Fort Worth to play associate principal horn. And so I've known this kid for a while. Just phenomenal talent. So we're looking at presenting him in a recital in June. And so some cool events like that, along with other regional workshops we'll be at. So that's exciting. I also want to give a shout out to the WVU Horn Studio. I'm teaching there this year. I'm just filling in this year. And they have hired a permanent teacher for next year, but I've been lucky to fill in as the horn lecturer there this year. So every Monday or Tuesday, I trek down to Morgantown. It's a long day, but love working with those kids, and it's taught me a lot, and I hope they've learned a lot too. So big shout out to them. What else?
You are busy, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's keeping me. That's a big commitment for sure, but well worth it. So
cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, and this has really been a pleasure.
Hey, right back at you guys. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's been fun talking with you.
Sounds good. Well, hopefully you will not run into Lance on the street, since you guys live in the same town. So.
And you're way cooler than Zach said you were going to be. Yeah. I don't know what was going on about. It was like half the interview he was complaining about you.
Yeah.
Actually, he mentioned in the interview, we were talking about auditions, and he said, recently we had the third horn audition, and I then, after he was done, mentioned that you were going to be, we were interviewing you soon, and if he wanted to mention anything that you had screwed up at the audition and won in spite of. So, and there was an uncomfortable laughter, and then he said, "Nope."
And we figure he owes you money or something.
Yeah, exactly, something. Yeah, so he took the high road at least once. So there you go.
Nice.
So
okay.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. This has been really great, and that is going to do it for another episode of The Brass Junkies. You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to help support the podcast in order to make more episodes like this one possible, please visit pedalnotemedia.com/donate for more details. Also, be sure to check out our latest recording, The Brass Recording Project, at brassrecordingproject.com. The Brass Junkies is produced by Joey Santillo. Executive producers are Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.